Our guest tonight is making a return visit because I asked him to, and I'll tell you why. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. James Monteiro is my guest tonight. He had been here previously a few weeks back talking about the post-election environment and some of the pre-election environment in the city race between Buddy Cianci and Jorge Elorza. And I felt like there was a little bit of muscling going on the east side. He actually is a community leader in Mount Hope, and he's got a great story because he went to jail for a long time, turned his life around, and I'm sure he's got some things to say. He got my attention when I was at a press conference during the political season. Buddy Cianci at the Billy Taylor Park facility, and they were talking about police and law enforcement, and James Monteiro, my guest, just really got after it passionately about what everyone's missing about law enforcement, that they're missing too much, that there's violence going on that really doesn't get tended to. So I want to talk with him about those things tonight, so I'm looking forward to him being a guest. Nice to have you aboard. Thank you very much for watching, and we shall now turn to the rundown and suggest that this thing out of Staten Island is a very different case, and it really gives you pause. We got a major problem in the Pawtucket Police Department. A Hummel report has started that whole fiasco. There's a big meeting tomorrow that has a lot to do with the value of your car, and I want you to know about it. Maybe you can make it. And we told you we'd get the Christmas tree lighting on here, since in our state house it is a Christmas tree, and we'll check your state of mind as well. All right, let's dig in here just a little bit. We have some time to discuss this very different case, I think, and it just is. All of these stories that everyone likes to lump together, which are a very small element, a very numerical and statistically small part of the interactions between police and people, black or white, every day. Nonetheless, here's the headline: New York Times, waves of protests. Sure, why wouldn't there be? And here's CBS's summary.
This morning, a small Christmas tree was added to the Eric Garner Memorial at the site where police officer Daniel Pantaleo put him in an apparent chokehold.
We need justice for this. Somebody needs to pay.
Garner's wife and mother appeared on CBS this morning, saying they're devastated a grand jury decided not to charge Pantaleo. The incident was recorded on cell phone video. Garner can be heard saying he couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Garner's last words were a rallying cry at protests across the country yesterday. Officer Pantaleo released a statement expressing remorse for Garner's death. His lawyer told the New York Times Pantaleo testified he did not intend to hurt Garner, and that he thought because Garner could speak, he could still breathe.
Which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, I had people calling the radio show today trying to explain to me that if you can say, I can't breathe, then you can breathe. Have you never been in a situation where you felt your breath being taken away and you were able to muster, I can't breathe? I've also had the wind knocked out of me and not been able to breathe at all and not say a word. But this guy, he sounded like he was in legitimate trouble. Guess what? He was. Now, his health issues and all that certainly add into this whole thing. But I'm sorry, this grand jury, remember now, we're just talking about indictment, we're not talking about conviction. This grand jury seemed to miss the broad side of the barn, and I don't know why we haven't heard more about the details of the evidence in the grand jury, a la what they did in Ferguson. We haven't heard much from the Staten Island prosecutor here. There are a variety of charges from reckless endangerment right up until murder that they could have considered, and they said no to all of them. A trial may have borne out a not guilty verdict for the police officer, and that may have been appropriate. But this seems to be short shrift, and a life was lost despite him resisting, despite him not cooperating. I mean, at some level, for what he was doing, allegedly selling, loose cigarettes, come on, man. Mayor de Blasio weighed in too, and he took it to another level.
This is profoundly personal for me. I was at the White House the other day, and the President of the United States turned to me, and he met Dante a few months ago, and he said that Dante reminded him of what he looked like as a teenager. And he said, I know you see this crisis through a very personal lens. And I said to him, I did. Because Shirley and I have had to talk to Dante for years about the dangers that he may face.
So Mayor de Blasio has a son who's biracial. This is a whole big conversation. You know what? I grew up respecting the police. I was told to respect police. I respected police, and I think most people do. The special conversation that has to go on with African American youth is a very interesting dynamic. I think overplayed at times, and has nothing necessarily to do with this case of a chokehold that I think probably deserved an indictment. All right, let's move on here and talk about a major problem with police, but has nothing to do with the interactions with the constituents. The Hummel Report comes up with this one after a long investigation. Jim Hummel, HummelReport.com. Listen to some excerpts that just cut from this very lengthy report, and I think you'll get the gist.
Well, I report to the chief of police.
Okay. Does he know you've been out, like, on the golf course during your workday?
I haven't been on the golf course during my work day.
You sure about that?
Yes, I am.
On hours that you say that you've worked, that you've been out on the golf course?
No, I haven't been on the golf course on my work day.
Crestwood?
I haven't been on the golf course during my work day.
But you've been on the golf course?
Yes, I play golf. That's one of my hobbies.
Okay. And what about going over to your parents' house and just hanging out like you did last week? You had 2 days where you left at 1:30 and then you just spent the afternoon.
Okay, that's the end of this thing. You can talk to the chief of police if you have any questions.
This here, as far as I'm concerned, if verified, this is clearly stealing. You know, depending on the dollar amounts will determine if it's a felony or a misdemeanor, will determine how we go aggressive. But let me assure you that if we prove all this and verify this and there's documentation to support it, we're going to take it to the end.
There's enough self-explanation there. There are records of being at work and him being on video, not being there. Check the Hummel Report and you can see the whole story. Well, later today, after this investigation went viral, as it normally does with the Hummel Report, the state police announced to Jim Hummel and the rest of the world that they actually were going to take on the case at the request of the city and investigate. Now, I figure that Major Moreau during this time ought to be relieved of his duty, despite being paid, suspended with pay. I don't know how he can lead as the third-ranking officer in the department during this, but the public safety director and second-in-command, Tony Pires, and I don't seem to see eye to eye on that. I talked to him about it on the radio today.
Why then wouldn't you just suggest that because you have called the state police in for some help on an investigation on a single individual based on this journalistic report, that it would be in the best interest of everybody to offer him his suspension with pay right now?
I feel very strongly that we should not be paying the officer to be, the major, to be at home collecting a salary without utilizing his services based on the information that we have at the present time.
It makes no sense to me. The cash flow is ironic and disturbing, I understand, but that's what the contract calls for, that's what the law calls for. I don't know how an officer can lead when he's got this cloud hanging over him. If he's found not to be guilty of these things, no case moving forward, then he can be just fine. It makes no sense, and they got to revisit that in the city of Pawtucket. In the meantime, I want you to know about a meeting tomorrow. This is not a big discussion here. I just want you to know that the Vehicle Value Commission will be meeting tomorrow. You know Rob Cody, he's a guy who's been here a few times. There's Rob. Thank you, Laura. Rob has been here. He is like the one-man band trying to regulate how we pay taxes on cars, the value of cars and how they're determined for taxation, and the system by which we are taxed are issues for the Vehicle Value Commission. They have public hearings at times when you can never go. But in case you're just messing around, taking the day off to do some Christmas shopping or Hanukkah shopping, maybe you want to show up at 2 o'clock at Capitol Hill, second floor tomorrow, and tell them that you think the system is wacky, because you know what? It is. And speaking of Capitol Hill, when you go up there, you can see the tree. We missed it last night because our recording is at a different time, but actually everything was kind of on at the same time. But there's our Christmas tree. 2 years in a row, we're able to call it the Christmas tree at the State House. Secretary of State Ralph Malus fills in to be the master of ceremonies in that particular thing, in lieu of the governor, who just can't spit out Christmas tree. All right, we'll meet James Monteiro, I guess, when we come back. Stay with us. Oh, but first, I will check your state of mind. You're supposed to yell that really loud at me. We had a sign there. We took it down. See, I can't remember anything. Your state of mind. Call us, email us, Facebook post, the like, and there you have it. Here's a Facebook post. Dan, had all the people that the police had been told to put up your hands done so, I believe that only 1 out of 100 would have been shot. Police should champion the new buzz phrase. I guess what Don is saying is that since they say, put your hands up, they should embrace the new mantra, which I don't think necessarily fits based on the facts of the Ferguson case. Does that make any sense? We'll ask James about it and a whole bunch more. Stay with us. Welcome back in. I was telling you that I first saw James Monteiro at a press conference where Buddy Cianci was talking about beefing up the law enforcement and the police, and I thought, well, I got to talk to this guy about some of his points of view. He also has a great story, which I want to talk about first. Here's a picture of him in the College Unbound. That must be a picture from, what's the picture from? It's a nice picture.
That's from the website, but actually that's in front of the house. College Unbound is a program for adults who return to school that allows you to work full-time and go to school full-time.
Right.
And it's project-based. And that building that you see in the back was donated to an organization I started while in school, which is called Billy Taylor House.
Right. So I want to talk about that in a second. We don't have to get after all of your life story, but it is pretty profound. You messed up as a kid, left the area, grew up here. By the way, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You grew up here, got jammed, you left, you got jammed up. You did 10 years in jail in Baltimore, right?
Approximately, yeah.
Wow, what'd you do?
It was drug-related. I had a drug problem, and I was in possession of some stolen property, and I ended up receiving a significant amount of time.
10 years is a long time to be in the slammer, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 10 minutes would be a long time for most of us. You can't capture, I'm sure, in a quick question and answer session what that was like, but what was that like?
It changes. Sometimes it's scary. It's lonely. It's dark. I don't know. You just try to stay focused. It can be difficult.
But you came out and you said, "That's it. I'm turning a new leaf."
I decided in jail. I decided that enough was enough, and I figured that the only way for me to be able to get out and stay out was through education. So I was like, "What am I going to do when I get home?" So I ended up going back to school while I was incarcerated. I had dropped out of school when I was in the 8th grade. I had been incarcerated before. I would come home. I would try to get a job, but everything the jobs, they just didn't pay, or I wouldn't be able to get a job at all. And I figured if I was going to be able to get out and be able to sustain a family, I was going to need to get some education.
All right. Well, obviously you made all the right decisions. Unbound, again, is a great program. You're pretty proud of it, and what you're really proud of is this Billy Taylor House. Tell me about that.
Well, Billy Taylor House is a program that I started through College Unbound. I say that College Unbound saved my life. I would say that. And the reason why I say that is because without education, I had no choices. I left Rhode Island because I figured there was no hope here for me. There was no opportunities, and I had 1,000 excuses. And when I came back, I had all the reasons to stay. And College Unbound allowed me to compete. One of the things is I think we tend to, when we get older, dreams go deferred, so you can try to fit in people's boxes, so you can try to pay people's bills, and you let go of dreams. What College Unbound did was it allowed me to dream again. And one of my dreams was to start a nonprofit organization that would deal with youth that had were growing up with the issues that I had growing up, and they showed me how to pretty much put this project together.
Name for Billy Taylor.
Billy Taylor House.
The story.
Billy Taylor was a guy that I grew up without a father in the home, and this was a guy that served as a mentor for us. He was born with a heart condition. He had open heart surgery when he was 2. Wasn't supposed to live past 5. Ended up living to be 27 years old, and in that short time, he impacted the whole Mount Hope neighborhood. When Billy died, drugs came into the neighborhood. The neighborhood just went down.
Really?
It did, literally. And the house that we got is actually the house that he lived in. So it's great because when I came home, the house was abandoned. And talking to some friends, I'm like, where is everybody? And the neighborhood has went through a lot of gentrification lately. And I was like, well, what's going on with that? And he was like, that's Billy's house. This was happening there. And there was a program there that fell apart. And so we ended up trying to get it.
Well, so you came on the show a few weeks back, and we talked about the post-game politics, and I said I wanted to come back to tell a little bit about your story. Now you're telling a little bit about your story, and I want you to come back again because I'd like you to bring some of these kids and other unbounds and some of the success stories because we need to be positive. But when I come back, I want to talk to James about what he said at a press conference, which is really compelling and important. And it felt desperate on your part, and I want to find out why. Stay with us. So as I was telling you, in covering the mayoral politics and the campaign, there was one event where Buddy Cianci happened to be the one talking about law enforcement, and James Monteiro was at that event, and for about 10, 12, 15-minute period of time kind of took the press conference over with a speech that you made about what you thought was going on in the neighborhoods. You were not only passionate, you sounded desperate in some ways. Tell me about what you think. Again, you're in Mount Hope, and you were talking about the Mount Hope neighborhood specifically, that in terms of manpower for police, you were saying what?
See, when people think of Mount Hope, it's like Mount Hope is a part of the East Side. There's 6 pieces of the East Side. You got Blackstone, you got Summit, you got College Hill, Wayland. So people don't really look at Mount Hope as being someplace that needs just as much services as any other part of the city. When
because it's up on the hill.
It's on the East Side, and when you say, "Oh, that's the East Side," people think of Blackstone Boulevard or Brown University.
But it's not that way.
Oh, absolutely not. There's a lot of issues there, and as a result of it is from a lack of funding going over there for years. There's been a lack of programs, especially for youth ages 15 through 21. It's like when I came home from Baltimore, my brother lives on Doyle Avenue. He's like, "We got to do something with these kids," and I was like, "Well, what do you suppose we do with the kids?" And that's another reason why I started this project, because I went around the neighborhood and I was like, "Well, what do these kids have to do?" And there's absolutely nothing for these kids to do, ages 15 to 21, outside of maybe play basketball. So I understood why they were hanging out on the block. And one of the kids that I know, his mother ended up getting shot. I used to run all the programming at the Institute, and I was wondering why I didn't see the kids over there. Like, why weren't the kids from Mount Hope taking part in the programs over there? And then we had one kid come over there, and you had the other kids from Southside come down the street, and they're like, "What is he doing over here?" And then that kid never came back to the programs again. So I get it. It's kind of difficult for kids to access services in other sides of town.
Very territorial.
Yes.
Okay. But you were telling me, in addition to that reality, you were telling us that law enforcement response, because of manpower and other issues, is almost non-existent, that there are things that are going on that go unreported. That was your theme. Right?
Everything has been reactive. And again, I think in Mount Hope, because it's going through a heavy gentrification process, I think they tend to report less about some of the stuff that happens there. Don't know why, I don't understand the reasoning for it, but I know there was 4 shootings in a matter of 24 hours, and only one of those shootings was reported, and that's when somebody got hit.
This is the speech that you were making back during that press conference.
Less than 24 hours.
Is that a perpetual situation, or just every once in a while you get a flurry of this kind of stuff, and it's still, listen, four events in 24 hours, only one reported is enough for anybody. Hello. But is this happening on a regular basis, an irregular basis? What?
This stuff is happening all over the city. These things are stemming from rivalries that are happening between East Side and Chad Brown. Somebody had gotten shot at a nightclub, I guess the night before or 2 nights before, and this was in retaliation to that. So things die down, but it doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that it's died down for now. So who knows when this will resurface. Somebody got shot. Matter of fact, that kid that was shot at the nightclub, he ended up getting killed, I think, about a week, 2 later.
See, this is play-by-play that we're not following in the mainstream, and that's your point. Your point was we're not following mainstream violence in a way that's accurate. Is it a police problem? Is it a resource problem? What is it? It's a neighborhood problem. It's a behavioral problem. It's all those things. But what do you think fixes it in one fell swoop?
See, I don't think we got here by accident. This didn't just happen. This is a series of events that have been going on for years. I always say if you want to understand what's going on right now, you have to look at 10 years prior. And I think a lot of decisions to cut certain services or programs or policies is the direct result of what's happening now. And I think we need to go back to that. A lot of the stuff is reactive. I think we need to be proactive. My thing is, especially with this next generation, I get it. I understand wholeheartedly what it is to have to learn the hard way. And some people are going to have to learn that way. But the ones that are coming up, I think we really need to focus on them because they're the ones that are getting pulled in. And this thing is generational. It's repetitive.
Right. You know, I knew there wouldn't be enough time for this conversation, but you've laid some groundwork here. Come back with some of your success stories, but also let's do some work on what you think can be improved in the city of Providence. Constructive conversation as opposed to just worrying about Ferguson, even though that's important. Will you do that with me?
Definitely, absolutely.
James Monteiro, folks. We'll come back. Got one final thought. Stay with us. Doggone it, it feels frustrating sometimes to have such a short period of time to talk to people who have so much to offer, and I think James Monteiro is certainly one of those guys. He's going to come back a lot, not only his College Unbound program, but the Billy Taylor House and the things he's doing and his constructive ideas for making the city, not only the Mount Hope neighborhood safer, but the city safer. Tomorrow night on Dan York's State of Mind, we're going to bring a guest from last night right back, Scott Wolf from Grow Smart, Rhode Island, who supports this Roadmap RI program, and Mike Stenhouse from the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, who really doesn't like it. And the two of them are going to talk to each other about it here. We'll probably eliminate the rundown, give some good time for a debate, and have a real conversation about Rhode Island's future and how it ought to look. So please make a program note for that tomorrow at 7:30 and 11:30 if you miss it. I will see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO until 3 o'clock. And until then, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.